Hello and welcome to Grouchy Geeks episode 55. My name's Scott and joining me as always it's Steve. How's it going?
All right, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, the weather's improving. Lockdown seems to be, well, I'll be honest, I'm so out of touch. I don't know whether it's easing or we're on the road to it easing. But things seem to be improving slowly, I think.
Yes, we're getting there. We are definitely getting there.
So what news have you got?
So, there's lots of new TV stuff coming out at the moment, all sorts of new shows being announced, even with all of the problems of the last couple of years. And one of them that caught my interest was Lena Headey from Dread and also, of course, Game of Thrones is going to star and executive produce a new sci-fi series called Beacon 23.
I don't know much about it, but this is based on a book series, I think, isn't it?
Let's have a look. I'm not sure. It sounds quite interesting. So a sci-fi type. Yes, you're right. It's an adaptation of Hugh Howey's 2015 novel. There you go. So it's going to have a 9-month exclusive run, and this is what really caught my attention on Spectrum.
Another streaming service I've not heard of.
Spectrum Originals. So my next question was, what the hell is Spectrum Originals? So I've looked it up. Spectrum's Originals is a premier destination for premium original service series. Available to Spectrum video subscribers on demand and ad-free.
Yeah, I take issue. Given that I've never heard of it, I take issue with this description as the premiere service.
So it's something to do with AMC, but I think you have to pay for it separately. It's not really clear. It says it'll run on Spectrum, and then it'll have a second window across AMC network platform. But I'm just like, I've never heard of Spectrum. I didn't know it existed. Oh.
It's like, to stick with the news, it sounds like a cool... I'd already read about it. It sounds like a cool show, and I'm happy for Lena Headey. But the streaming services that we had, I think, did a really effective job of more or less ending piracy.
Yeah.
Because piracy was much less about cost. It was more about availability.
Yeah.
And now this, all of these TV executives with this constant multiplication of streaming services, and it really is starting to sound like every time a big new TV show is announced, it's on a different streaming service. This is the way that you get piracy back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just nuts.
But yeah, so it's an interesting thing. It's going to be on Spectrum and AMC. What that means when it comes to the UK and what thing it'll be on, I've no idea. But it's a kind of watch this space and look out for Beacon 23. Mm-hmm. So there you go. Anyway, what news have you got?
Cool. So sticking with TV shows. So we don't particularly talk about anime very much because I don't think either of us are massively into it.
No,
like I've got nothing against it, but it's not really something I've particularly delved into in a lot of detail. But one of my favourite anime shows is from the 80s and it's called Cowboy Bebop.
Right, I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's very well known. It has genuinely one of the best opening sequences I've ever seen in any TV show.
Right.
But it's actually due onto Netflix. So it's being turned into it was a 1-season anime show. It's being turned into a 10-episode show for Netflix starring John Cho. And I read this today.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's virtually ready to be released onto Netflix. And I had absolutely no idea that they were doing it at all.
No, I had no idea either. Wow.
But it's as I'll be honest, as long as they keep the opening theme and do a similar thing with the opening credits, then I'm quite happy. I don't really care who's in it, what they do in the show, as long as it keeps the opening sequence. I'm
Yeah.
fine. I'm 100% behind it.
All right. Okay, that's something to watch out for then if you're a fan of the old show. And see, because I know they updated Thundercats and stuff, and I was like, oh, I don't know. And I haven't even dared go and look at it in case they change the original theme, because it just won't be the same. Whatever they do, I can't see it working without that original theme. It was so good. It was so brilliant. And, it was all just perfect at the beginning. And now I'm like, I don't think I want to watch a remake or a reboot of any kind without the original credits. But, never mind. So this is something we don't normally talk about either, but I thought I'd mention it because it caught my interest. And then I watched the trailer and it looks amazing.
Oh, really?
Right? It's probably utter nonsense, especially when I start to describe it. However, it looks amazing. So the Duplass brothers, not the other brothers from, Stranger Things and stuff, have produced a number of docuseries in the past. And this one is a new one that's coming that follows an investigative journalist who goes back to Northern California to a pot farm that he visited in the late 1990s, where when he was interviewing people back then, there were 3 guys that said they knew several people who got torn apart limb from limb in a savage attack by Bigfoot.
Oh, wow.
Right? And it sounds ridiculous. It's coming to Hulu on the 20th of April, and it's called Sasquatch. And it sounds ridiculous, and it sounds absolutely absurd, except the guy who's investigating it's not like Louis Theroux, and it's not, Alan Partridge with a wink and a nod. He's taking it seriously, like anything he's looking into, he's trying to find proof. And I watched the trailer, and it was like a cross between the X-Files and something else, with this guy stumbling into it, and people being interviewed with their faces blurred out and their voices changed. And like one guy refused to talk about it because he said, I saw the bodies that got ripped apart. And it could just be a massive smokescreen for the pot farm business and the drug trade in there, which is very vicious apparently in the 90s, where they may have actually torn some people apart just to kind of have reputation and all this sort of stuff. But it looks fascinating. Even the slightest hint of any kind of... And those other people go, no, I've seen Bigfoot. And we're like, really? It's like if someone comes here and goes, we've seen Loch Ness Monster. We'd be like, really? Come on. But it just looked fascinating and eerie and a bit creepy. And I thought, I'll watch that. I'm interested.
You're brilliant. Yeah, whether you believe it or not, whether it's true or not, a good documentary is a good documentary, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you maybe watched that one on Go, and that was fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you've never watched it on Netflix, the AlphaGo documentary, it's about the world champion of Go playing OpenAI's Go AI, and it's edge of the seat stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it's man against machine. It's the ultimate kind of, instead of chess, it's Go, one of the oldest games in history. And it's the best player in the world versus a computer. And it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It sounds so dull. It sounds like the worst thing ever, but it's really interesting. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so Sasquatch. So how... Is Hulu a thing that's over here?
I don't think it is. I think they get pushed onto other things.
Right.
If we get them at all, they get moved on to something, or 6 months goes by and then they appear on Amazon or something.
I've just started looking at the trailer for. I've got it with the sound down.
It's brilliant,
but it's really well shot. Right?
I know. It's like proper atmospheric and just really disturbing. And these people going, "No, it is real. I don't care what you say. I saw, I saw the bodies that were ripped apart." And it's like, "Ooh, okay."
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah,
cool.
Any more news?
I've got one. This doesn't really constitute news, but something that we've been hearing about for a really, really long time, but was just released this week, is Zack Snyder's 4-hour-long cut of the Justice League movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. That doesn't sound like... I mean, it's not something that I'm massively invested in. I'll be honest. I tried to watch Justice League. I didn't make it all the way through. But something that I was really interested in I'm guessing back in the 90s, was a time when all of these director's cuts would come out of things
Yes.
like Blade Runner and Aliens and all sorts of things, and I loved watching them. And I've actually heard really good things about this Snyder cut, which is over 4 hours long, and I'm it's not something I'm massively excited about, but I'm kind of intrigued to watch it just to see what it's like.
From what I've heard, people have said it's better in that it treats the characters more appropriately. That Joss Whedon tried to bring in too much of his trademark humor, and it wasn't appropriate for certain characters, like having Batman quip and things. It's like Batman doesn't make jokes. He's not the quippy one. That's Spider-Man. I've heard it's better from that. I heard it sets up the villains a bit better. But some people have just said, yeah, all of that, and he spent an extra, I don't know, 20 million or something. It's like a bit pointless. I'm not that bothered. I did watch the original and thought it was an absolute bag of spanners, to put it politely. I thought it was a complete mess. So this one doesn't intrigue me much. I mean, I'll probably, like you, if it comes on TV at some point, I'll watch it. But I'm not going to rush out to see this one. I'm not a particular fan of Snyder. I think he's done some good films, like Watchmen was brilliant. But apart from that, I don't think I've really enjoyed anything he's worked on. But it's an odd thing to happen. I mean, the way he came off the project was very unfortunate because of the death in the family, and someone else had to step in at the last minute and take over, which is never ideal. But it's unusual that they'd come all the way back around to this, years later, and have a new version. I can't think of any others that have done that. Yeah,
like I say, it's one of those things that I'm kind of intrigued by it, but it's not something, Justice League anyway isn't going to get me like massively excited at the best of times.
No,
but it is something that I'll be interested to see the contrast between this and the version that we got in cinemas.
Yeah. The differences between the two would be interesting to look at. I've got one last bit of news. This is that Benedict Cumberbatch is set to be in a World War II drama called War Magician.
Oh, God.
Sadly, it's not about any of my books, unfortunately. But here's the thing, it's based upon a true story. So it's about a guy who's a British illusionist.
Oh, okay. I know that I've not heard of the film at all.
Yeah,
but the British forces in the Second World War employed an illusionist to do things like full German reconnaissance aircraft that they had more planes than they. Yeah, that's really interesting.
So it's saying British illusionist Jasper Maskelyne, who used his skills to defeat Erwin Rommel, and the film is going to feature international sort of a magic gang in quotation marks across Africa, Europe, and the Middle East, who conspired to defeat the Nazis. So it sounds like is what we're thinking, which is based upon the true story of how they created kind of cardboard planes and tanks and all the rest of it, so that when the German spy planes went over and took pictures, it looked like there were massive amounts of British forces in North Africa. And they're like, oh, God, right, there's loads of them there. And, of course, it wasn't. It was just cardboard, but they couldn't tell the difference. So I'm hoping it's that kind of a story as opposed to, ones with actual magic. But given that they said illusionist, I think it's going to be closer to that than Doctor Strange.
Yeah. Yeah, like I say, I'm aware of the story, but not the not the film at all. But it's a really, really, the story itself is really, really interesting. I'm just hoping that one of these days Benedict Cumberbatch gets to play a moron, because he's in every single thing. He's always, be it Doctor Strange, Star Trek Into Darkness. He always plays the person that's cleverer than everybody else in the room, and he's really arrogant about it.
The closest he's got is when he's played Frankenstein's monster on him and Johnny Lee Miller alternating. Yeah. That's the only time I've seen him play a stupid character. Anyway, that's all the news I have.
But even then, he was playing a stupid character. But 50% of the time, he was like the clever one.
Yeah, 50% of the time he was Dr. Frankenstein. So it's true. It's true. Right, should we go on to the main feature?
Yep.
the scene. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
Welcome back. For our main feature today, we're going to be talking about some hidden gems. As we said just earlier, because there are so many streaming platforms and there's so much TV now, there's a massive glut that some things get lost in the shuffle. So we're going to talk about some shows that we've seen or we've heard about that you may have missed and you should perhaps check out because they're definitely worth a watch. So, what do you want to go first? What's your first show?
Oh, sure. And what I've tried to do, there's possibly one exception to this, but what I've tried to do is just come up with shows that are actually available on a streaming service at the moment.
Yes.
So depending on where you are in the world and what services you signed up for, there's at least a chance that you'll be able to watch these for free, which is good.
Yes, definitely.
So my first is actually a show that came out, and I remember watching it when it was first on. This is a show from the mid-90s, and it's available. This is just a UK only service, but it's available on All 4, which is Channel 4's streaming service. So you can watch the whole thing at the moment. Although I've also found out that somebody somewhere has uploaded the whole thing completely illegitimately to YouTube. So,
oh, wow.
So you can watch it. You can watch it on there until it gets taken down with copyright strikes.
Okay.
and this is a show called Nowhere Man. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. It is a blast from the past because, like I say, it was on TV over 25 years ago now.
You have to remind me. I don't remember it.
So it's about a guy who's a photojournalist. So he goes into war zones and he's famous for taking very provocative photos of war zones, and that's what he's well known for. And then he has an exhibition where he displays a bunch of his photos. And the next day, he essentially becomes erased. So there's no record of his existence. The people that know him, like family and friends, are pretending that they don't know him. He's got no bank account, no home, no nothing. And he manages to trace it down to this one particular photo that he took of a bunch of people in a war zone. And there's something about this photo that caused the powers that be, whoever they might be, to completely erase him from existence.
Wow. And
the whole series is about him just initially just trying to survive, but actually trying to find out who it was that's erased him and what it is about this particular photo that caused him to be erased. Hence the name Nowhere Man.
Mm.
And it's very episodic. So it's not like nowadays where it's like a big overarching movie. So it's very episodic, but it's really, really compelling. And I actually know almost nobody that's seen this, but it's definitely worth checking out.
I've not even heard of this. Do you know who the main actor is? Is someone well known?
So he's somebody that is sort of recognisable, but he's not a massive star. And I don't recall.
Right.
I just typed in Nowhere Man into Wikipedia. They came up with the Beatles song, unsurprisingly. Starring Bruce Greenwood.
Oh yeah. I know
Who's
Bruce
in?
Greenwood.
Who's instantly? I looked at him. He's in Space Above and Beyond, isn't he?
He's in
Lots
Star
of things.
Trek.
Yes,
He's Captain Pike in the new Star Trek films.
that's right. Yeah, he's in lots of things. Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah.
Is in. Apparently, they've done a spin-off movie of Dirty Dancing.
Oh God.
Didn't know that.
Okay.
I was quite happy not knowing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's one of those people that even if you don't know the name, he's a recognisable face.
Okay. Well, I've not even heard of that. No.
It's a really, really good show. Like I say, going back to the mid-90s,
Yeah.
very episodic, but very lots of conspiracy theories, lots of stuff with him trying to find out what's happened to him has happened to him, and it's really entertaining show.
So currently on YouTube and where?
And so if you're in the UK,
Yep.
You can watch it on All 4, which
Right,
is Channel
All 4,
4's
okay.
streaming service.
I'll check that out. Oh, brilliant. Okay. So this, my first one is a Belgian apocalyptic sci-fi drama that was based upon a 2015 science fiction novel called The Old Axolotl. It's a 6-part TV series in Belgium. It's on Netflix. It's obviously with subtitles. And this is Into the Night. Have you seen this?
Yes, I have. Yeah, it's really, really good.
So for those who haven't, it's fascinating. It's really, really good. There's actually going to be a second series. It's about a guy at a airport who, at the beginning, seems to be acting absolutely erratic and insane. He's trying to get on a plane, like desperately, urgently, and everyone else is just kind of going about their business very, very slow and carefully and normally. And then this guy basically gets a gun off a soldier and bursts onto the plane and forces it to take off with whoever's just on that plane. There's about 10 or 12 people. And he makes them take off at gunpoint and start flying. And then once you're up in the air, you realize that he's not actually a villain or he's not a terrorist. He's a soldier, and that something else is going on, and that everybody behind where they've taken off for is essentially gone. There's no response from them. There's nothing on the ground. And it's the idea that they're dead, that the entire population of the world is dead, and they have to keep flying and stay in the night because if they get exposed to sunlight, they die. It's I don't want to say any more, but it kind of unfolds over these 6 episodes, and it's a very international cast of actors and very interesting people. And there's flashbacks that give you little glimpses of who they are, and then it moves forward. But with it only being 6 episodes, you can whip through it very, very quickly.
And I don't think they're full hour-long episodes, are they? Maybe
no, I think they're about 40 to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoyed it. What about you?
It's really, really good. It's really edge of the seat stuff, and particularly like the whole series is good. But I particularly like the first couple of episodes when you don't really know what's going on, and the cast don't really know what's going on. And the other thing that I would say, again, no spoilers in all of this, but it reminds me. And I hate to draw this analogy, but it reminds me a little bit of The Walking Dead in the sense that in The Walking Dead, it's not so much the zombies that you need to watch out for; it's the other people that are fighting them.
Yes,
and this is like that. They're fleeing from something that's potentially going to kill them all. And because they've got a plane, there's this constant pressure for them to go ever west. So they stay. It stays nighttime the whole time, and they're under that constant pressure. But whilst they're under that pressure, they have to really watch out for each other and the people that they come across.
Yeah, because they don't know who's actually there with them.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
Yeah, brilliant show. Really good show. Cool. So another show that I don't know whether you've seen it or not. I can't remember where I saw this, but it's available now, at least in the UK, on Netflix,
Okay.
which is a show called Salvation.
I've heard the name, but I haven't seen the show.
So the plot itself is a little bit similar to Deep Impact. So
Right.
it's a TV series. So it's 2 seasons of 13 episodes. So it's a TV series about an asteroid is going to collide with the Earth and basically wipe everybody out, or wipe a very large percentage of the population out. But whereas Deep Impact is very much about it's like a disaster movie, basically. Deep Impact, where it's kind of about, given that the asteroid is striking, how are people dealing with this? Salvation is a little bit is set before that. So basically, they know that this asteroid is going to collide with the Earth in several months' time. So the Earth isn't currently having any issues, but they know that there's going to be this huge issue coming up. And it's all about how different factions on the Earth get together to try and work out a solution, and what those competing solutions are, whether it's to have a bunch of people, go off in a spaceship where they're going to be safe, or to try and deal with things down on Earth and that sort of thing. And it's a really compelling show. I'll be honest, I preferred season 1 to season 2.
Right.
But it's a really interesting show to watch, and it sounds really bleak and really dark the way I'm describing it, but I found it quite an upbeat show.
Okay. All right. Well, it sounds quite good. It's not. Yeah, I'd seen it. I think I've seen the name flick past on Netflix and wondered what it was, but I haven't heard anybody talk about it. So I've not felt the urge to go and check it out. This is it. There's so much out there. You're like, what's that? I don't know. And you might watch the trailer and then go, nah, I'll leave it. But it's really interesting. Okay, that sounds cool. So my second one is, let's see where is it on Netflix? Yeah, it's on Netflix. And this is called The Spy. It's a mini-series starring Sacha Baron Cohen. Have you heard about this?
No, and I was not expecting you to say that name.
Exactly. So this is a completely straight role for him.
Wow.
This is not a comedy in any way. It's not his first one. He has done other things before, but this is him as the lead. It's a 6-part episode series that's based loosely on a true story. So in the story, Sacha's plays Eli Cohen, who's a guy who was previously attempted to get into the army and he got rejected. But because of who he is and how he looks and all those other things about him, he's recruited by the Mossad.
Mm-hmm. And
he then has to go undercover and assume the identity of this other person as like someone in high society in Syrian. And it's leading up to the events of like the 6-Day War in 1967 between Israel and Syria. So it's a period piece. There's no internet, there's no technology. It's very basic. It's, in the 60s. And it's about him learning to be this spy from being an ordinary guy, going undercover, and then slowly transforming the idea of, is he the person that he's pretending to be, and how does he hold on to who he is, and versus, his family back home who don't really know what he's doing or what he's actually getting up to, and he's supposed to be having a wonderful time as this other person, but he's trying to gather information. It's like him walking a tightrope the entire time,
mm-hmm.
because he's pretending to be someone else and he's slowly disappearing into that person, which is something that, Sacha does very well. He becomes the character,
mm-hmm.
and it's much like this person. So it was kind of a good fit for him, but it's quite dark in places, I'll say that, and quite tense, but it is inspired by real life events, and it's not a comedy at all. It's very much kind of, espionage and thriller.
Wow, I mean, I'm not aware of him having done anything other than comedy, but I could be completely wrong on that. Apart from this, obviously.
So he's just done a film for the creator of The West Wing.
Mhm.
What's his name? Aaron Sorkin. Aaron Sorkin just did a film on Netflix as well that's based upon a true story, The Trial of the Chicago 7. Have you heard about this?
No, I haven't.
So this is a film where, again, it's a straight drama, and there again, Sacha Baron Cohen's in that as well. So he's done a couple of other things that are very kind of straight roles. But yeah, this is about the some people in America who went against the system and got into trouble and all sorts of stuff. But yeah. But anyway, so that's The Spy, a six-part thing.
And that's available on Netflix, you were saying?
Yes, that's available on Netflix now. So it's worth checking it out. Wow,
that's amazing. So
do you have any more?
Yeah, so I've got one more. And this is a show. Unfortunately, I've broken with the rule. This is available on Amazon,
right?
But it's not on Amazon Prime. So unfortunately, although I really wanted to mention it, but unfortunately, if you want to watch it, money is going to have to change hands. And this is a relatively recent sci-fi show, and by recent, I reckon probably sort of 2014, 2015 it came out.
Yeah.
And it stars Tricia Helfer, who we know from Battlestar Galactica. And it's a show called Ascension. I don't know if you've ever heard of this one.
Is this the one with the sending the manned ship like a...
Yeah.
Go on.
That's exactly right. So the plot of the show. So it's one season of 6 episodes, and it's self-contained. So it's not an ongoing thing. So it's just one story of 6 episodes. And the idea behind it is that in 1963, so during the height of the Cold War and the space race, America decided to send this generational ship into space to try and populate a new world they'd discovered. So we join this ship, or we join the story 50 years after it's been launched. So sort of mid 2010s. And they're halfway through their journey, and they're just at the point of no return. So there's no way that they can ever come back now. And the first thing that happens in the story is that on this spaceship called Ascension is their first ever murder. So somebody gets killed, and that's how the story opens. And it's about them investigating the murder and trying to find out why that happened. And the interesting thing is because, you know, the ship was launched in the 1960s. And so essentially that the ship itself is sort of kind of frozen. It's stuck in this kind of weird vision of the 1960s, including the dresses and the hairstyles and the attitudes and things like that. But they can radio back to Earth. So there's a delay of a certain amount of time because they're quite a long way from the planet, but they can still speak to people back on Earth, and people from Earth can speak to them. So it's essentially a murder mystery story, but it's a murder mystery story set in this very, very weird environment.
It's almost like they're on a submarine because they're trapped.
Yes.
You can't talk to anybody else, but they've got to try and solve it. And it's not as if they have a policeman on board the ship. No, why would they? They're a generational ship. So someone has to kind of step up. I think I've watched the first 2 episodes. So someone has to kind of step up and say, right, we're going to try and find out who the murderer is and question all these people. And it's a very peculiar situation because no one's ever done anything like this before. So it's breaking a lot of rules that have been set up in the society that they've created on board this ship. But yeah, I don't know why I didn't finish it. I'm not really sure why. Anyway.
Yeah, it's a very peculiar situation and a very peculiar culture as well. Because, like I was saying, they're kind of frozen in the 1960s, but because it's a generational ship that is on 100-year journey, and then once this journey is over, then they're then meant to be populating the planet that they arrive on.
Yeah.
There are people that are expected to get married and have children, and people die of old age and things like that. But because space is at a premium, they can't afford any essentially dead weight on the ship.
No.
So if you want to get married and have children, that has to be sort of approved by the senior people on the ship to make sure that your offspring are going to be sort of contributing members to the spacecraft and the society. So it's a very, very, you're right, it's this very sort of self-contained setting, like on a submarine, but it's like on a submarine in this very sort of culturally weird environment.
Yeah. It's an odd one. I should really go and finish that, really. I don't know why I don't know, it's just that thing of there's so much on, and maybe I got lost and I was watching something else. So anyway, so my last one is another overseas show. I'm not sure if you've watched. I think we've talked about it, but I don't think you've watched it. And this is Money Heist.
No, so in our little WhatsApp group, I've heard people raving about it, but it's not something that I've watched.
Okay, so it's a Spanish TV show that it's called House of Paper, but we've translated it for some reason to Money Heist. There you go.
House of Paper is a much better name, mate. like Money Heist. It's just too in your face. House of Paper is like kind of subtle.
Yeah, Money Heist is like an American film that's already been on. I think.
Yeah.
Something Heist, with in the 90s with Woody Harrelson and that's what it sounds like. Money Heist. Anyway, so Money Heist is a Spanish TV show that's started there for some reason, and somehow it got picked up by Netflix, and it was transformed. I think when it first aired on Spanish TV, it was just doing okay, and it wasn't doing great. And then it got onto Netflix, and it kind of exploded and became this massive phenomenon to the point where everybody knew about it. Everybody was talking about it. Then Netflix renewed it for another series because of how popular it was. Then they did a documentary afterwards, talking to the producers and the cast and all the rest of it, and just how it completely changed. Anyway, so the actual a little bit of the show is interesting. It's about a group of people who are brought together by a guy who's known only initially as the Professor to rob the Royal Mint in Spain. And none of them really know who the other person, the real identity of the other robbers. They all have kind of code names of a city, and that's how they're known throughout the show. So you've got, Denver and Berlin and all these other people. And it's about 12 or 10 or 12 people. And so there's the robbery in the Mint, which, remember how, did you ever watch the first season of Prison Break?
Yes.
Now, Michael, who was the main guy, he was always so clever, and he was always one step ahead, and he always knew what they would do, and then you always had a counter movement. It's like that. It's like the Professor has been planning this heist for years and years and years. He's studied it intricately. He knows the responses. He knows what they're going to do, and then the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. And so every time something happens, he's got a plan of what to, should be the response. But of course, they're people, they're human, things go wrong. And so he's trying to resolve things. He's outside, but the 12 robbers are inside the Mint whilst they're trying to rob it. And then the police turn up, and then it's like, that's just part of the plan. And it just unfolds and unfolds and unfolds. And it's really, really good. There are 2 seasons that are each sort of 15 or 16 episodes. Now, I've only watched the first 15, the first kind of full season, because it ends perfectly for me, and I'm not sure I want to go watch the second season. Apparently it's good, But I'm like, I don't know. It's that thing of Prison Break. The first season was perfect,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's like quality went down a bit. So it's definitely worth watching that first full season. But whether or not it continues, up to you. But I'd highly recommend it.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's Money Heist or House of Paper, if you prefer,
Mm-hmm.
on Netflix.
Brilliant. Yeah, I've heard of it, and I've heard people say really, really positive things about it, but it's just not something
Genius.
I've gotten around to.
Yeah, it's worth your time.
Mm.
Do you have any more? One more?
I'll mention one more. I was in two minds whether to mention this, basically because I am so not the target audience for this.
Okay.
Because this is a show. It's available on Amazon Prime. It's got 3 seasons, and there are 51 episodes of it.
Wow.
And there's a spin-off show. And one of the season regulars is a favourite of ours, who unfortunately we had to talk about passing away last episode. So Mira Furlan is a regular in it. The only reason I'm hesitating is this is a show that's clearly aimed at 10-year-old girls.
Go on.
And it's a show called Just Add Magic.
Never heard of it.
Okay, don't blame you. You really shouldn't have done. I don't know why I ended up watching this. I only can imagine that I ended up watching it because when I first got Amazon Prime, it was probably the first thing on the list, and I wanted to see whether it was working or not.
Right.
But it's basically about these 3 girls, who I'm guessing are about 11 or 12, that find this cookbook for allowing them to cast magic spells. And they basically try, and so they basically try to do their best to make sure that things turn out okay. But there's a whole conspiracy theory of one of their grandmothers was heavily involved in doing magic and now can't speak or interact with the world, and is basically essentially a shut-in. And there's a whole history between the people that she was interacting with. There's a huge backstory, and it actually fills out the world in a really interesting, compelling way. But like I say, unless you're a 10-year-old girl, you're probably not the target audience. But I am claiming that it's also a genuinely good show as well.
Right. Okay. And Mira Furlan did a voice on the show.
So it's a live action show. It's not animated at all.
Okay.
It's live action, and she was a regular. So she wasn't a star. She wasn't. In it. She's not in it every single episode.
Okay.
But she's a regular in the show itself.
Okay. Wow. Right. Well, if you've got a younger audience or younger children, that might be right up their street.
Yeah.
Something to watch.
And if like me, you're 47 and you decide to watch it and you hate it, then you've been forewarned. Don't come complaining to me.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Okay, I'll end the positive. My last one very quickly then. I know we've talked about this. I know because we've talked about it on our WhatsApp group. And this is Lupin, the French mystery. Yeah. Have you watched this yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay. It is excellent. It is absolutely brilliant. It is a 6-part thing, I think. 5 or 6 episodes, and there's going to be like a part 2 coming soon. And it's based upon the idea of the adventures of a master thief, who's based upon a character created in the early 1900s in France. And it's all in French, obviously, this show. And it stars Omar Sy as the main thief, Hassan Diop. And the character of Hassan Diop is the only son of a Senegalese immigrant who comes to France to live there, and he starts a new life with his son. Something goes wrong. Hassan ends up in a children's home, and his father's blamed for something. And it's all about his quest to 20 years later, he comes back to France, and he's like the ultimate con man. He's smooth, he's sleek, He's really good at disguises. He's really good at tricks. He's good at misdirection. He's good at controlling other people and manipulating them. And he's always smarter than everybody else. And it's about him trying to find out what actually happened to his father and get to the truth, because he finds some clues that are different from the actual story that he's been told all these years. And it's him investigating this and gradually trying to piece together what happened, whilst pulling a number of cons on people. And it's really good, really, really good. So I watched the first 5, and the second 5 will be released mid-2021, they're saying. So I think April or May they're coming out, or something like that. But yeah, highly recommend you check out Lupin.
Cool, yeah, and that's another show that I've heard good things about, but just never got around to watching. So I should definitely check it out. But it's also, like you were saying about Money Heist, there's always something that's really compelling watching when you've got a supposedly a bad guy who just has it all together, like just everything is planned perfectly, and they just know what they're doing. That's always a pleasure to watch.
Yeah. Him and the professor definitely share some DNA. They're just, they're so clever that they're always one step ahead, and they just know people and how they work, and then they know how to respond. So it's really, really good. But yeah, I can't wait for the second half of that to drop on Netflix.
Cool.
Yes, check it out. It just shows you, we've only listed a few, but there are so many shows out there that we haven't even touched. I wasn't even aware of. I've passed on the menu of one of the streaming services, but I know nothing about. So are there any shows that we should definitely check out, that you should tell us about, that we don't know about? Get in touch with us in all of the usual ways. You can email us. You can come onto the Facebook group. We're on Twitter. You can, of course, check out all of the podcasts on the Geek Syndicate network as well. We'll be back next month with a new episode. But in the meantime, it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
Good night.
Good night.